Follow me to the sunshine streets, open your ears and brains. A recipe of fresh and bloody treats, right here's where you jump the trains. The clock stops here, so grab a beer, throw your sensibilities away. We ain't walking, we're talking to the north, east, west, and south. This broadcast is fast like the dead we will last. We're running on rotten mouths. We're talking to the north, east, west, and south. This rotten cast is fast like the dead we will last. We're running on rotten mouths. Come on, we're running on rotten mouths. We're running on rotten mouths.
All right, welcome to episode 6. Somehow we've done 6 episodes of, what is this? This rotten podcast. I almost forgot the name. Should become part of me.
Well, sometimes you got to spit the knuckles out into a bowl.
Right into a bowl. Which brings us to our topic for today, which we're talking about extreme horror today. Nick, what comes to your mind when you think of extreme horror?
When I hear extreme horror, I think of brutal kills. I think of extreme psychological situations that just, give you nightmares. Just real brutal stuff.
So brutal stuff. What do you think is not extreme horror?
I mean, these days, that's I would say I could see how like Friday the 13th back in the day, at the time, maybe seemed like extreme horror. Now, it's like campy horror. So I would consider like Nightmare on Elm Street is not extreme horror.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, we've just come so far in, since the 80s and 90s where we just push the envelope to the point where some of the stuff people are putting out is kind of like sickening, right? Where you're just like, oh, that's nasty. I don't care for that. And that's kind of the realm of extreme horror. It feels like it really started to pick up in the 80s in the writing world. When you had a movement of just really brutal writers who didn't care, right? For some reason, people limited themselves. Like you'd read Shirley Jackson's, I can't remember the name of it, but they're in a house, The Haunting of Hill House, and they're just walking around being creeped out, and it's weird, and that's horror, right? That's what it used to be. Now you've got like movies like The Terrifier, and they're just sawing a naked lady in half.
Yeah.
Right. And showing every little bit of it. So we're going to talk a little bit about extreme horror today. We've got a guest coming on later, Brian Bowyer, and let's get into it. So first off, do you like extreme horror?
I feel like I have to be in the mood for it. If I'm in the mood for it, it's kind of like a jolly time.
What's the mood for Nick? What gets Nick in the mood for extreme horror?
It's kind of based on like a peer attitude. So if there's like someone that's like, oh, let's rack up. I've seen Terrifier 1 and 2, haven't seen 3. I'll be like, hell, I'll go with you, kind of thing. It just kind of seems like not necessarily a rite of passage for that kind of stuff, but more like.
Is it like a gut check for you?
A little.
Oh, how much can I take?
I mean, at this point, that kind of stuff doesn't really, unless I was like super stoned, that would be a gut check. To go and get to the point where you're almost super paranoid and then go and watch it, because then you'd really get in your head,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, I mean, I know I'm not going to go and see anything like cutting edge, but that was intended, by the way.
That was a pun.
It was an attempt at a.
It was bad. It was a bad one.
What?
So what are some things? Are there any extreme horrors that you can think of? You're like, yo, I like that one. That one was good. That one played with me.
The news will do that for me.
The news?
Yeah, just regular real life. Nah, it doesn't help.
No, it's not very helpful. It's not extending the conversation here.
I actually liked Terrifier 2 because it had um, a really cool heroine in it, and the music was kinda cool. And they kind of explained a little bit better that Art the Clown's really just a manifest he's just a demon. So that made it a little more I don't know, I actually it was enjoyable. I liked that even though it was some of the kills were
Yeah,
real brutal.
yeah, definitely. Um,
That's my favorite one out of the 3 so far.
yeah, I think I haven't I don't really enjoy extreme horror. I read some of it, and it's always like I'll read one just because people are talking about the book, and as a writer, you want to examine sort of what's going on in the writing world. What is the zeitgeist? What's happening? What are people doing experimentally with this, with
Mhm.
gore and violence? I have a lot of gore and violence in my books, but I don't consider them extreme. I could be totally wrong though. Like when I think about This Rotten World, there's a lot of scenes of people just getting torn up,
Yeah.
but I don't know that I just go into it lovingly with that. I'm not there just for the gore. There's still stories and characters and things. And a lot of times the extreme horror for me, it comes down to, is it extreme, but it needs a story for me for it to work for me. And a lot of times I read some of these extreme horrors and there's no story, there's no heart to it. It's literally just a playground for violence,
Yeah.
right? And I'm not necessarily here for that. So I'm not necessarily a fan of extreme horror unless it's bringing some meaning, some thematics to it.
Mhm. Yeah. I think there's this air of, like, maybe it's almost like there's a micro audience too that's what I'm thinking about when I'm watching extreme horror. I'll be like, there's probably some people that, like, really get off on this, and I think they're just waiting for, like, movies like this. Of course, they probably watch other things, snuff stuff that who knows what they do, but
Yeah.
so there's yeah. I think, yeah, there's some stuff in your books that would rival scenes like that, but like you said, the focus isn't that at all. It almost makes it more effective. Comes out, maybe you build a relationship with someone and then boom, this horrible thing happens. You're like, "Oh my god."
Right. That's the way I see it. It's driving the story.
Mhm,
It's keeping the surprise element in there.
mhm,
It's not the point of it, right? When I watched Terrifier 1 and 2, I was like, they're doing some really amazing stuff. There's some great practical effects here, but the stories are like thin,
mhm.
very thin. Like there really isn't a story. It just seems like, hey, we're trapped and there's clowns killing people, and it's a chance to show off this cool stuff we can do. Which I love the practical effects. I think they're fantastic.
I do too, yeah.
Um,
They're pretty cool.
but at the end, I just feel empty and sort of hollowed out, and that's what some of the extreme writing does to me as well. I will be reading something and just pushing myself through it, slogging through it. People do amazing stuff in the field, but at the end, I got to read something else. I'll go read like a fantasy book when I'm done
Yeah.
because it just takes a toll on you.
Palate cleanser, yeah.
Yeah, you got to have the palate cleanser after the extreme stuff. Um, so extreme horror is also known as splatterpunk, which is a term that people use, but I hate. Can you guess why I hate it?
Well, I just kinda without even knowing how to explain why I think I know you hate it, I just that term, hearing it, I automatically know you're gonna be like, "Screw that name, dude. That's garbage."
Yeah.
I'm trying to put it into words why, but I just know you, and I know that Splatterpunk you don't like.
No, I'm tired of the word punk being thrown on everything.
Ah, that makes sense.
Like, there's nothing punk about just being violent and gory. There's nothing punk about that. What are you saying? Punk's about like resistance, revolution, trying to say something. I know, the lines kind of got blurred when Blink 182 came along, and they called themselves punk.
Sure.
But splatterpunk was the first or second because there was also cyberpunk, which was a little bit punk. I didn't really have a problem with cyberpunk because they were pushing the idea of technology and society, and most of those stories are actually saying stuff.
Mhm.
Splatterpunk is like most of them weren't really saying anything. Um, the only one who I'd be like, yeah, that is very punk rock would be Clive Barker. Have you ever you know Clive Barker, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, he's done. If you're a movie person, Nightbreed, which is one of my favorites, the Hellraiser series, which is very different from the book. Um, and there was one book they made a Books of Blood movie, but it wasn't very good. But the Books of Blood are amazing. Those are definitely punk rock. So there's only one person that I consider splatterpunk, and that is Clive Barker. Everyone else, there's nothing punk about them,
Mhm.
right? Steampunk is just like a laughable term. It's like, oh, really? You're real punk in your Victorian steam castle? Get out of here. So we can't throw the word punk on anything anymore. It's like, unless it's punk, don't use it. That's my one gripe about the whole term.
Or if like someone's a punk ass bitch, they're put it before. It's like a prefix to
What do you mean?
look at this punk motherfucker. Right?
I wouldn't do that. It's an insult to punks.
Oh, I see. Very enlightening. Okay, for
Yeah,
you.
that's like a compliment. I'd be like, oh, look at this punk. I'm like, that's a compliment.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Fight the power, dude.
Yeah. Fight the power, dude. What are some? So we talked about kind of Terrifier. What are some other things that you consider extreme? Can you think of any off the top of your head?
Jeez.
Drawing a blank. I'm gonna give you some and see what your thoughts are on these.
I know I've seen them.
Yeah,
A lot, but I'm
the
trying
human centipede.
Yeah.
What do you think of that one?
Pretty extreme.
Pretty extreme.
Yeah.
Do you think it's good?
No.
Why?
Which tends to happen with stuff like this. I just kind of got a little bored with it. Because the premise is just it's concluded pretty quickly in that whole thing.
Yeah.
I don't
Like
know.
I never got it. I was like, this guy's grand experiment is sewing mouths to butts, and he thinks that's some sort of great statement. It made no sense whatsoever.
That's kind of how Terrifier is in a way. It's like it's getting into the fact it's like a it's like a ridiculousness. So it's like Art the Clown. He makes these little like like he's an actual clown. He has these clown behaviors for doing these horrible things to people. And I think that's the whole thing. That's the whole gist. So it's kind of like the human centipede scientist or whatever, mad doctor. It's like, all right, so that's the entire story. Like, this guy's just sick and twisted. That's it. And you're like, huh, okay.
Yeah.
So you just do it for visual and you're like, oh man, I saw this gross thing and we can all talk about it. And yeah, I was just like, eh.
Yeah, I think a lot of people sort of look at it like it's a badge of honor.
Mhm.
Right? They're like, I checked this movie out. I watched this rare monstrosity.
Mhm.
Right? Like, you've heard of a Serbian film.
No, I don't think so.
Well, I'm not going to go into detail about it. You can look that up on your own, but I don't even want to say what they're doing to people in there. But it's pretty pretty extreme. I think I watched the first half of it and I was just like, I had heard rumblings about what happens in the movie, and I was just like, I'm not going to finish this. There's no point to this. I'm beyond the age where I worry about what people care about me, as far as, have you seen this extreme horror thing? I don't care about that. When I was younger, I would seek that stuff out because I
Oh,
was sort of like a
Jesus.
thrill seeker.
That
Did you just
sucks.
read something about it?
Yeah, should I read it? Should I read the
If you want to. I mean, I think it's kind of gross, but I guess
synopsis
for
here?
people that don't know what we're talking about,
An aging porn star agrees to participate in an art film in order to make a clean break from the business, only to discover that he has been drafted into making a pedophilia and necrophilia themed snuff film.
yeah, that's
It's
all
brutal,
you need to
dude.
know.
Brutal.
Yeah, it's
But
gross.
like I said, real horror is reading the news because that people do that kind of shit.
Yeah.
Like I wonder what people from like Serbia and places like or Armenia and stuff, do they watch extreme horror and just be like, like does it even get to them at all?
I don't know.
Because they've been around such, who knows?
Yeah. Could you imagine getting a time machine and bringing someone from like 1920s, like Iowa, to our timeline and making them watch some of the movies we got? You're like, here, Ever seen a movie like this before? And you put in Terrifier,
Oh, dude.
their head just blow up.
Probably.
Yeah.
That's another thing about movies, though, because I'm making this like broad point where it's like, oh, life is horrible. So, but like when you're watching a movie, that whole suspending disbelief thing is happening. So it's almost like you're being hypnotized. So sometimes it can be like, at least in the moment for like a couple hours, more affecting. It really draws you in and like pushes the story. You connect with a character and like, so yeah, it could be pretty affecting. I mean, people do walk out of Terrifier. They're just like, oh, I can't handle it.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting to me is sort of like the reality of extreme horror and the way our brains work, right? We in our heads are telling ourselves this is not real, but our brain is seeing this and exposed to this. And I don't know that our brain can actually separate that stuff, right? And so it becomes a part of us, whether even if we tell ourselves it's not real, it's just a movie, it's just for fun. What is that experience actually doing to us?
Yeah, there's been tons of studies about that, and there's some reality to that statement. Um, yeah, that's the best term I can come up with is the whole idea of like the suspending disbelief because there's been times where I've watched movies that I wasn't even into. Maybe like somebody I was dating or something took me to something. I was like, okay, yeah, let's do this. And I gotta admit that you feel a little bit of emotion for some of these characters. And it's something I'm not even really super engaged in consciously. I was just like, whoa, that actually affected me.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the world around us, it is visuals and emotions, and even though it's not happening to you, it is happening to you, right? That's the glory of movie. Like when something really like breaks your heart or you really love a movie, it feels like it really happened to you,
Hmm.
right? Um, none of us want extreme stuff to happen to us. Well, maybe some people do, um, but I'm just curious in the line. I think maybe that's why I feel sickened by it. Like I feel like even reading it, because I make movies in my mind when I read a book, so it feels like I was there, and that's gross to me.
Yeah, and it's deliberate too. So you have music to accompany the mood. You have all these things that are intended to draw you further into the event, each part of it. So it's like, yeah, it's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, and that being said, I don't want to make it seem like I'm, talking bad about extreme horror.
No,
I
yeah,
just want to throw out there that if you are an extreme horror writer, there is room to move in the genre where you can start taking the thematics and mixing it with these extreme scenes and making something extremely powerful, which I would be along for that ride, right? If you're just going to kill people and people are going to randomly die in horrible ways, you're not really doing anything new. It's just shock value,
yeah,
right? Get the thematics right, do something really thoughtful with it, um, and you will be a king in horror if you can pull that off, right?
yeah,
I have sort of a different audience, so I don't really go that extreme because I'm there for the story and trying to entertain them. But that's my advice to anyone that wants to get into extreme writing: don't call yourself splatterpunk, and actually have a nice little story in there
yeah.
that has a message and a meaning.
If there was okay, I just have a question about Splatterpunk. If someone had a genre, right? No, I'm not going to go there.
Do it.
I was gonna.
Take me to Nick's weird land.
It was just, well, it's just because it's kind of an incoherent thought. I just had something that's.
Do you ever have the coherent thought?
Hey, now.
Waiting for it. I'm waiting
Hey,
for
careful! I get one a week.
it.
All right,
Maybe
careful.
this is the one.
Dude, it could be.
This could be the one. Share it with me.
All right. So I'm thinking like poop stuff, like Splatterpunk.
All right, I think I'm out. I think I'm done with your
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Right. I'm sure our audience is curious where you're going with this. I'm gonna let you finish it.
Oh no.
I'm already a little grossed out. Let's hear it.
Well, you don't like the term Splatterpunk because it's like for a couple of reasons. Punk, you describe kind of what the whole idea of punk is. It's like resistance, and then the whole idea of like their own form of expression through how they did music, and And uh and then the fact that people just put punk on everything now to make it cool or whatever. So I'm like, well, what if there was like a genre? It would have to start with like maybe a series, and there was a character who was a punk, but like instead of shitting on everything, he literally shat on everything. And then it's like the splatter punk kind of like. Would you be okay with that? Would you be okay with a series like 1 through 7, and it was this punk, and he had this amazing ability to shoot his shit, and so he literally and figuratively shat on things like in a resistance mindset.
He's actually punk rock.
He's actually punk rock, but he actually shits on shit that he doesn't, that he's like.
So he's like he's out in the world and he's like, yo, this cop is garbage.
And he actually shits on
him. He just drops a deuce on him.
He doesn't drop it. Like, he can shoot this shit.
So he's like a superhero of pooping.
He's a splatter punk. No good? I'd watch it. I'd watch it.
You'd watch it.
Yeah.
You'd watch it.
Yeah, you'd watch it.
You're like, make that TV show now.
Who wouldn't watch it? They'd watch it.
I don't think I'd watch it.
I'm going to challenge you on that. I'm going to somehow get this financed and made, and I think you'd watch it. I'm pretty sure.
I'm interested in you making this. I'm interested in you in spending a ton of money putting together Splatterpunk 1 through 7. 1 through 7. I love how you jumped to like 7 parts on this.
There's got to be 7.
Like there's 7 like
it's that good
seasons worth of Splatterpunk. Okay, that does sound extreme,
right? It's in the genre.
I don't think I'm into it. All right. So we've talked about extreme horror and splatterpunk and Nick's weird story ideas. Nick doesn't write books, by the way, which I think we're all grateful for. But I do.
AI writes books now.
Well,
right?
I wouldn't call those books either. But we are going to talk with someone who does make books. We're going to do a little bit of an ad. We're going to pay some bills here. And then on the other side of that, we're going to come back and I'll do a reading of my own extreme horror, which is not really that extreme. And then after that, we'll have a guest, Brian Bowyer, who writes really bleak, cool horror stories. So we'll see you in a bit. Enjoy the ad.
Jackie Plunge here to ask you, are you ready for now? 17 of today's hottest loafs in one shower-inducing collection. Wipe into another dimension. Smash it down the drain. With Bad Bunny, Carrie Underwood, Gunna, Travis Scott, Luke Combs, Luke Bryan, Luke Grimes, some other asshole named Luke, and Luke, and more. Now that's what I call shit. This is the music that keeps plumbers in business, and me for that matter, because if it wasn't shit, I wouldn't be here on my proverbial knees selling it now. Now delivers nothing but the biggest shits you crave, but in order to get them, you have to call now. Just text or DM TURD and enjoy the sonic stench of diatonic diarrhea now.
All right, welcome back. I'm going to be reading an extreme horror story of mine. I don't have a lot, but sometimes I dabble. So this is called The Circus of the Elder Lords. Few people could have foreseen it when the Elder Lords took over, that these ancient deities from before time would start getting bored. Eating people, turning them into flesh puppets, melting them into strange fish-human hybrids all sounds like loads of fun, but when you're an immortal being, it's just not enough. Harvey took a drag off his cigarette, didn't need to worry about the cancer anymore, part of the job description at this point. He blew the smoke into the air, watched as Bia, the human canvas, walked by in her spandex outfit. She got a new one every day, had to. By the end of the night, it would be in tatters and so stained with blood and gore, drunk Tom had to burn it. She winked at him, the gills on her neck flaring. Harvey shivered, not a shiver of pleasure, but of revulsion. He'd had a good time with her up until a point. He'd drawn the line at the gill stuff, the coppery, fishy smell, too much for his senses. But those tentacles, baby, the tentacles! He finished his cigarette, ground it out with his boot, and stepped into his caravan. Inside, he went about his preparations, shaving the hair from his body, oiling himself up, and applying the scale makeup he'd perfected. With a paintbrush, he applied metallic purples and greens. By the time he finished, his face glowed with a luminescent iridescence. A knock came at the door, and Harvey sighed, wrapped a towel around his naked body. Outside, an amorphous black blob stood shifting, its skin absorbing all the light, making its body appear as if it was twice its actual size. "Are you ready?" the creature thought at him, its voice echoing in dark, as if it came from the bottom of a 1,000-foot shaft drilled in the earth. "I'm always ready." The creature came every night, always asked him if he was ready, the implication that one day he wouldn't be, but Harvey knew what happened when one didn't perform. Blake, the bloody torch, had illuminated him on that matter. One day, Blake simply gotten sick of being lit on fire, of exploding and smoking charred flesh for the amusement of gods who didn't care about them. He tried to walk away, and then the black creature, their unofficial carnival barker and ringleader, had fallen upon Blake, devoured him to the point that Harvey wasn't sure if the man had ever existed. When he tried to picture his face, it was as if he had been erased completely, as if in the act of consuming Blake, it had torn a hole in the fabric of reality. Harvey shook his head. It was enough to make you mad. Maybe that's what had happened to Blake. He'd simply gone mad. Doing this job long enough could do that to you. Harvey returned to his dressing room table, flung his towel on the bed, and commenced painting the rest of his body, mimicking the style of the mutated populace. The members of the carnival showed few signs of the metamorphosis, especially those who had been employed the longest. Bea was a new member, had begun the change before they'd needed to replace Blake, but since she'd joined, she hadn't progressed. Still, Harvey didn't know if he was lucky or cursed. He still had his human body. At the dawn of the Enlightening, he had been called to Bismarck, North Dakota, out in the middle of nowhere, along with 100 other fortunate souls, or unfortunate, really depended on how you looked at it, he supposed. The first contact had been terrifying. Out on the plains of North Dakota, they'd been instructed, the voice of some elder lord invading their minds. Every muscle in his body had contracted, spasming, revolting at the mental touch of the Ancient Ones. In images soaked in blood and gore, Harvey and the original performers had been given their instructions. When they came to, they collapsed into their muscles sore for days. They had risen like sleepwalkers, set about making the vision of the Elder Lords a reality. That first night had been the worst, as he stepped in front of the audience, viewing him not with their own eyes, but the glowing eyes of the Ancient Ones. He hadn't watched the other performances, had no interest in doing so. He still hadn't watched it all the way through, probably never would at this point. As he applied the last touch of paint to his body, he grabbed another cigarette and a bottle of the cheapest whiskey. He went and sat on the stoop of his caravan, the wind blowing over his naked body. He shivered again, remembering the pain of the first performance. It hurt more because he hadn't expected it, had never suffered anything worse than a broken bone in his young life. The black ball, the Ancient One's henchman, rolled by, slapped him with one of its tentacles, stealing the warmth from his body. The sign. Harvey took one last drag from his cigarette and one last pug from his bottle. Naked, he wandered the well-worn path to the slit in the backside of the Big Top's tent, wondered when they would tire of this game, when they would have their fill of the circus. Even a god had to get tired of seeing the same thing every night. On a back table, he picked a blood-stained hook up. Let me try that again. On a back table, he picked a blood-stained hook off a table, waited for the announcer to call his name. He waited with his head down, trying not to think of the world before, the way it had been when he'd had hopes and dreams. Now he was but a servant, cursed to perform for the most sinister force in the world. The spotlight lit up the curtain in front of him, and his testicles shriveled up into his belly. Someone announced his name, but he only half heard it. With the hook in his hand, he pushed through the curtain and out into the Big Top, his feet making footprints in packed dirt and then sloshing through the crimson remains of the human canvas. The eyes glowed as they always did, the mouths smiling at him, row after row of fish teeth, scales, and waving tentacles. Harvey executed his bow, and with no musical accompaniment, no fanfare, he dragged the hook across his abdomen, grunting in pain as the blood began to flow. He spread his skin apart with his hands, tears gathering at the corner of his eyes. He always feared he would pass out at this point, as he unspooled his insides. Most people don't know this, but intestines are slippery, hard to get a hold of. They want to stay inside, like a child during winter when the air is cold. He hooked his fingers around his guts, taking quick, short breaths, and then he pulled. Off to his right, a hook attached to a rope hung. He stabbed the loop of intestines over the hook, smelled his own shit bloom in his nose. With an air of theatricality, he waved at Drunk Tom, the stagehand, who perhaps had the hardest job of all. He had to watch. Every night he had to watch. The hook rose into the air, and Harvey wrapped his hand and his own intestines before they rose upward. When the hook had reached its greatest height, he hung there, peering out over the otherworldly audience, his blood raining down upon the gore-soaked dirt. He waved his hand theatrically, lending his performance an air of showmanship. He smiled, though this was not something he had been commanded to do. It was his only act of rebellion, the only way he could spit in their glowing eyes. With a smile still glued to his face, he released his hold on his intestines and plummeted to the ground, the coil of his innards unfurling as he spun and fell. Before he hit the bottom, some 10 feet off the ground, drunk Tom hit him with the trapeze, and he grabbed a hold of it, swinging out and up, his small intestine trailing after him like a comet tail. At the apex of his ascent, another trapeze appeared, and he leaped from one to the next. At the height of his next arc, he landed upon a platform, gravity making his spread intestines sag downward like a kid's drawing of a smile. He felt gravity pulling on his guts, tugging at him, at the spots where they were connected to his stomach and his anus. He executed a bow. Behind him, 10 feet away, a white pole ran from the apex of the tent and all the way to the ground. He leaped for it, his guts spooling out over his shoulder, sliding across his painted skin. He landed with his legs wrapped around the pole, and then he hung there, pausing to execute another wave. Then, with his muscular forearms, he wrapped his hands around the pole and began the final move. He spun, twisting and turning like a figure skater, doing a triple axel, only he didn't stop spinning. All the way down the length of the pole, he spun and spun, wrapping his guts around the pole. If seen from a distance, it might resemble a barber pole. Up close, it more closely resembled a massive skewer wrapped with an unending grew-soaked worm. Harvey's bare feet touched down in the dirt, and he bowed once more, feeling the tightness of his guts. He spun and waved again, noting the path he'd taken, the draping guts in the air, and those wrapped around the pole. His insides, something he'd never thought he would see. He turned one final time, felt a tug inside as he ran out of gut to spread. He grew lightheaded, knew he only had so much time to execute the finish. Breaking into a sprint, he ran away from the pole as fast as he could, the slack of his intestines disappearing quickly. And with a great snap, the ends ripped from his anus and his stomach. He ran, emptied and drained. With the last amount of his strength, Harvey turned to the audience, to their glowing eyes and dull scales. He spread apart the wound on his abdomen, showed them the empty darkness within. The eyes glowed brighter, fed upon Harvey and his pain, and then the darkness enveloped him. When Harvey next awoke, he didn't gasp, didn't feel the smooth skin of his belly or the bulge of his guts. He merely sighed, reached over to the side table next to his bed, and lit another cigarette. Blowing a cloud of smoke into the air, he tried to figure out a way to make today different, until it was his time to take the stage once more. And that is the Circus of the Elder Lords.
Follow me to the sunshine streets, open little ears and brains. A recipe of passion, bloody
Welcome back to the podcast. We're here with Brian Bowyer, one of my favorite extreme horror authors. I say the word extreme. I don't know if you consider yourself extreme, but when I read it, I definitely get those extreme vibes. So, Brian, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What do you do?
I'm a horror writer from Beckley, West Virginia originally, but I've lived throughout the United States, and I currently live in Marion, Ohio, but I'm leaving Ohio in a couple of days and moving back to my hometown of Beckley, West Virginia.
All right, so I heard you call yourself a horror author. Do you consider yourself an extreme horror author, or are you just straight horror?
Just horror with a lot of crime elements in it. Some of my stuff is extreme, but I don't consider myself an extreme horror author or splatterpunk. Just mainly horror.
Okay.
It just falls under the horror umbrella.
Where do you draw the line at then? Like, so could you say some of your stuff is, but a lot of it's not? What's your line for like, yo, this is definitely in the extreme range versus just your typical horror range?
I don't really draw a line, but I just don't really consider all of my stuff all that extreme. But that's just me. I mean, a lot of people do consider my stuff extreme, but I don't.
Okay. Sweet. So, let's see. I can't remember the first book I read. I think Perpetual Dread was the first book I read from you. And that was a very short piece, but very, very powerful, very strong, very, I can't think of the word. Visceral, I would say. Um, where are you getting your ideas from? Because you have this very dark view of the world that comes through in your writing. Maybe not you don't have a very dark view of the world, but in your writing, it's a very dark world, which is a commonality through the stories I've read of yours. I've read a handful of your books. So tell me about where does that view come from? Um, what are you trying to capture with these dark visions?
I'm not really trying to capture anything. I love to write, so I always just start with some characters, and then they just take off, and I follow them around and jot down what I see them doing. That's pretty much all it is. I never have a plan. I'm not trying to say anything. There's really no message to it. I'm just entertaining myself, and but I have very little control over the stories. Once they get going, they just take off, and I'm just along for the ride.
All right. So your latest book is Road to Ruins. Is that your latest one? You got more coming up, obviously.
Oh, I have more coming up. Yeah, definitely. That book's old to me. I finished that a long time ago, actually.
Okay.
But that's the most recent release.
Okay. So tell me the genesis of Road to Ruins. Like you say, it's old to you. Like how old are we talking?
Well, if you want to, well, it's a three-part novel now comprised of three novellas. The first novella in it is called Road Harvest, and that was originally a screenplay that I wrote in 1996.
Wow, that is
And
old. Yeah.
the story has not changed at all. It was just a few years back. I was like, man, let's just turn that into a novella because I hadn't done anything with the screenplay. I mean, I went to film school in 97, 2 year course in Nashville, 97 and 99, Watkins Institute. And it was one of my screenplays there, but it was not my thesis screenplay. That was a completely different one. But so I was like, let's turn it into a novella, and I did. And I just thought it was done, but then several reviewers of Road Harvest kept clamoring for a sequel. And I was like, what are you people talking about, man? That story's over. But then I was like, well, you know what? Those characters are still alive and they're headed back to California. So let's just see what happens when they get to California. So I wrote a sequel called Road and Arrows. And then about a year or so later, I was like, well, let's just go ahead and make it a trilogy. So then I wrote Grinding Road and just kind of bring it full circle. And then I was talking to a Candace Nola at Uncomfortably Dark Press after she had published a couple of my books. She was asking me what I wanted to do, and I just ran that by her about putting all three of those into one omnibus edition. She was like, "Yeah, let's do that." So I just put all three of them together and sent it to her. So now it's a book called Roads to Ruin, and it's all three novellas. Part one, Road Harvest. Part two, Road and Arrows. Part three, Grinding Road.
Excellent. Yeah, it was an intense ride. I definitely enjoyed it. I'll be posting a review on it down the road here. Um,
Thanks, man. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
yeah, I always enjoy your stuff. It leaves me feeling a little bleak in the end, but hey, if it doesn't affect you emotionally, what are we even doing, right? Um,
Mhm.
so one thing I noticed in your books is you seem to be quite well read, and I've asked you for like blurbs a couple of times, and you're like, I don't know, it's going to take me a long time, and then you come back like in a day, um, because you seem quite well read. Do you read a lot?
Constantly, that's all I do.
Yeah, you're not sitting around like watching like Survivor or something. You're reading books.
See my living room here? I don't even have a TV in this apartment, dude.
Is that's for real? That's your living room? Because I thought you were moving, but that's how you roll.
That's how it's been since the day I moved in here 2 years ago. This has been my walking track for 2 years.
Right?
I walk in here and I write on my phone for an hour every day while I walk. So that's 1 hour of uninterrupted writing time plus an hour of cardio. And then the and plus I just read, period. I mean, I don't even have a TV in here. I don't play video games. I read like 300 books a year, man.
Man, that's a lot.
Yeah.
How do you choose the things you're going to read? Because I always find
Completely.
difficulty.
It's just completely random.
Yeah. So
I read everything digitally. I don't read any physical books. It's all Kindle library stuff now.
yeah,
And I have Kindle Unlimited, so
nice. I like the Kindle as well. It helps me keep clutter out. I don't like clutter. I'm not
yeah.
I'm not a big fan of things. So I get that simplicity of just like I'm reading it, it's done, it's gone. Um, yeah. So what are your you've read a lot, obviously, do you feel like you get influenced by the things you read? Or are you just like, nah, I develop myself. I am who I am.
I'm not sure. I think I was influenced originally by the things I began reading, which was like everybody else, Stephen King, Dean Koontz, Clive Barker, stuff like that, long time ago. And when I first started writing, I was kind of imitating them, but then but telling my own stories, but trying to imitate their writing styles and techniques and stuff. And then eventually, I just, like everyone else, you kind of just develop your own style and your own voice and stuff. But that happened a long time ago. I've been writing for a long time, man.
Yeah.
But
Would
as
you,
far, I don't really feel I'm influenced now by anything. I mean, I have my own style, and I notice a lot of recurring themes in my work. But no, I don't see a lot of what I'm doing in other people's stuff really.
cool. So for people that haven't read you, how would you describe your style?
My writing style, minimalistic,
Is and that
fast paced.
is that a conscious decision? Have you ever tried like lengthening things? You're like, nah, that's not me. I don't like it.
Yeah, I just like to keep my stuff as simple as possible, man. If I could use a small word and a small sentence, the less words on the page, the better. I want to just basically just put the basics down, and the reader can just take it from there.
Yeah, I definitely see that. I mean, for if you ever read Brian's work, it's lightning pace. It's so fast. It's hard to believe how much stuff is coming at you when you read a Brian Bowyer book. Um, so you mentioned kind of a little earlier about your process, your writing process. Can you walk me through where's Brian getting ideas from, and then how do you go about turning that into something that people can check out?
It's usually just a character in my head. Usually, even before I'm finished whatever book I'm working on, I'll have a few characters up in there clamoring for my attention, going, me next, me next, me next. And I'm like, man, hold on, let me finish what I'm working on right here. And then I'll finish whatever I'm working on. Then I'll just have to make a decision which one to commit to. And then I'll just start writing about them. And if I have any ideas, they usually just go right out the window because the characters just take off and do their own thing, which keeps it fresh for me, you know. So I'm always entertained. I mean, I am my first reader, like all writers. They're their first readers. So it's cool to entertain yourself.
Yeah, I mean
Uh,
that's kind of the point sometimes, right? If I wasn't entertained by it, I wouldn't be doing it anymore.
exactly.
Yeah. Um, so you don't plot at all.
No.
And then what about your revision process? Like, are you do you does your stuff come out pretty formed, or are you working on that? How does that go for you?
I revise as I go every day, but it's pretty close to the first draft. But I mean, I write and then I look at it all throughout the day and keep tweaking it. If little things need tweak, any words I can cut out, I cut them out. And then there's better ways to phrase stuff. I'll rephrase it, and then I'll go to work and I'll write a bunch of scenes in my head or think about scenes in my head, and I'll come home and write some more. But even before I write some more, I'll go back and look over what I wrote earlier that day and revise it again. It's always a constant rewrite all the way until the end of the book. And then I go back to the very beginning and just go page one all the way to the last page and completely tweak every little thing. But so yeah, it never ends. I'm always revising.
Nice. So I hear you do a lot of thinking during the day, like dwelling on it before you even get home and start writing on it.
Oh yeah, and a lot of times things will pop into my head, and I'll just pull out my phone, spit it into my phone on the voice recorder. That way, I'll have it. It's
Nice.
just right there.
Cool.
I'll do that in my car, at work, wherever I'm at. Take notes.
Excellent. Yeah, gotten a few voice messages from you over from your car.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I respond to a lot of messages on social media just with voice or video because I don't have time to type out messages, and my responses are usually lengthy. So I'll just turn the camera around, spit it into the camera, and hit send.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never gotten there. I don't think I've ever done a single video one. I mean, this is the first time you've probably seen me. Yeah. Uh, let's see. So you write some pretty I mean, I consider your stuff extreme, right? I'm not reading like a lot where like, you know, um, I'm invested in this character and boom, something just wicked terrible happens to him out of nowhere, right? Um, so I get shocked quite a bit by your writing. I imagine that you're getting all sorts of responses to your writing. Uh, what do you, in general, what do you feel the responses to your writing, and have you ever had any troubles with negativity coming at you because of your writing?
No, the responses have generally been positive. I mean, I've had a few bad reviews here and there, but that doesn't bother me at all. I know my stuff is not for everyone, and we're all snowflakes. Someone doesn't like my stuff. Oh, well, I really don't care. I'm just writing for myself, man. This is my chief form of entertainment. This is how I entertain myself, writing and reading. And that's it. That's all I do for entertainment. So as long as I'm entertaining myself, I've succeeded. I mean, I really don't care about book sales or reviews or anything, man. I mean, I don't need money. I got money anyway. I just work, so I don't touch the money that I have in savings or checking. So I'm good on that. And, I mean, I want people to like the stuff that I write. It'd be nice, people read it occasionally, whatever. But negativity doesn't bother me. If people don't like my stuff, I don't care, man. I like it, so whatever.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I had a cough. So Roads to Ruin. Uh, could you sell people on that? Like, what if I was on the fence about reading Roads to Ruin? What would you say about why I should check it out?
I had a lot of fun with it. Maybe you will too.
Pretty simple. I like it. Um,
Yeah.
so what are you working on now? What do you got going on?
A horror novel.
Uh,
I just finished another horror novel called Gossamer, and I went straight into the one I'm writing now. I got like I think 7 books finished that aren't out yet.
all right. So we got a lot more coming from you.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I got 2 more coming. I got 1 more coming from Uncomfortably Dark Press later this year, and I have another one coming from Winding Road Stories later this year, and then I have 7 books finished that no one's even looked at, and then I got the one I'm writing now.
Nice. So you're pretty prolific. You're doing so. It's pretty much guaranteed that you're writing that book every day.
Not a day goes by that I don't write.
Yeah. How productive are you? I mean, how many words are you getting in a session? Do you just religiously do 1 hour, or are you like sometimes you feel more, so you might do 2 hours? How does that go?
No, I write more than an hour a day. That 1 hour is just while I'm walking. I walk
Okay.
for an hour every day, and I write on my phone the entire time that I walk. So that's the guaranteed minimum. I get 1 hour of uninterrupted writing time while I'm doing my cardiovascular workout. But I may have already written for an hour or two before I even walk.
Okay.
I'll get up in the mornings and just write, and then when I come home from work, I write, and on the weekends I just write. But I don't have any certain word count that I got to hit. I mean, if I just write one, sometimes I'll walk for an hour and only write a couple of sentences, man, and I'm like happy as can be as long as I got the story moved along. Because sometimes it's real hard to get it exactly right.
Sure.
Yeah. But then if I write a couple thousand words, that's fine too. I really don't care. As long as I'm doing something, I'm good.
All right. So horror. Why do you think you're drawn to horror as far as writing goes? And would you ever consider any other genres, or is horror like the one for you?
Well, I like crime fiction too. Some of my stuff I think is more crime than horror, but horror is just what I started reading. I didn't start reading until I was 16. I was locked up in a juvenile prison called the Salem Industrial Home for Youth in Salem, West Virginia. And there was a correctional officer there named Moscar, an Italian dude who happened to be a huge horror fan. And he started bringing me books every day by anyone who had published anything in the genre at that time, which was 1989. I'm 51 now, but in 1989, I was 16. And he started bringing me Stephen King, Dean Koontz, Clive Barker, Robert McCammon, Richard Lehman, Jack Ketchum. The list goes on and on. And right off the bat, though, man, after that first Stephen King book, I read Pet Sematary. And I was just like, I think I can do better than this. That's what the young 16-year-old Brian said to Moscow. I said, dude, bring me a notebook and a fucking pencil, man. And he did. And I started writing short stories, and he loved them. I was like, man, Stephen King is too fucking wordy. I said, these books are way too thick, man. They don't need to be this big, man. He's using way, way too much stuff that doesn't even need to be. And of course, I was an awful writer, but the stories entertained the hell out of me in that prison cell. And everyone I gave them to loved them. And then I would get out and I'd give them to my friends, and I never got them back. So, I mean, the stories were good, but the writing, was, of course, subpar. But that's what got me started. But I just kept reading, kept writing.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen like growth in your writing throughout the years. For the short time I've known you.
Oh, yeah.
How do you think that growth happens, and what things do you do to kind of better your craft just for yourself? Is it just the reading, or is there other things you try?
Just reading and writing. I'm constantly reading and writing, and then that's just all I do. And I'm always just trying to just do that constantly, and I just figure I'll just get better. There's no way not to.
Right. So you would be a big fan of that idea that you got to have 10,000 hours of something to be a master at it, right?
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, I loved Roads to Ruin. I think, what was the one you wrote before that? I'm terrible with names, by the way, in case you couldn't tell. I'm really bad with names. There was one, they were at this house, and the end kind of goes a little cosmic. What was the title of that one?
Autumn Gothic?
Autumn Gothic. Yeah, that's my favorite one by you. If you are looking for someone that's writes fast, tight, shocking horror, I recommend Brian's books. Autumn Gothic's my favorite. Rose of Ruin is a close second for sure. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, and I'm glad you enjoyed Autumn Gothic. I had a lot of fun with that one.
Oh man, that thing's awesome. It's so cool. Yeah, definitely. Like it's got a different vibe than some of your other stuff. It's more, it's just got that more spookier vibe versus the more visceral vibe of a lot of your stuff. So
it's my haunted house novel.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on the show with us. I hope you had a good time getting the interview on. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you want to talk about?
No, thanks for having me.
Hey, I love it. Yeah, we'll be in touch. Roads to Ruin, check it out. Autumn Gothic, check it out. And how many books you got overall?
Oh God, I don't know. Available right now, like 15 or 20, maybe. I don't know. A lot of my books are out of print. The ones still in print, maybe 15 or 20, and then I got plenty more coming.
Excellent. So hopefully Brian becomes one of your new favorite authors. I know he's one of mine. Check him out. If you like the interview, click like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And Brian, hopefully we'll catch up with you down the road as well.
Oh yeah, dude. Thanks for having me. And I'm a fan of your stuff too, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Follow me to the sunny streets, open your ears and brains. A recipe of passion bloody trees, right here's where you jump the trains. The clock stops here, so grab a beer, throw your sensibilities away. We ain't walking, we're talking to the north, east, west, and south. This ribbon cast is fast like the dead we will last. We're running on rotten mouths. We're talking to the north, east, west, and south. This one cast is fast like the dead we will last. We're running on rotten mouths.